Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Pesachim Daf Mem Gimel is discussing two types of chametz which are not complete chametz. They're sort of a middle level of chametz. They are chametz which is put into a mixture and it's mostly non-detectable. It is detectable on some level. That's what we call taroves chametz. Which level of detectability will be discussed in a later daf, but here we're saying that it's mixed in. And the other type of chametz is a chametz which is not in its highest quality condition. It's either not fully formed, it's not fully become chametz, it's kind of halfway there, or it got rotten and hardened or whatever it is. That's called chametz nuksha. So the Gemara is coming after our Mishnah, which had quoted these things. It gave 7 examples, 3 of chametz nuksha and 4 of tarovis chametz, mixtures of chametz. And it had said that all of them are a lav. It's a middle level. It's an iser dairai. So you get malchus for eating it, but it's not kares. It's not a full level of chametz. So the Gemara first of all wants to know why we need the 7 examples. Then the Gemara wants to know who is the Tana that holds of this middle level applying to these 2 examples. The Gemara will bring 2 Tanaim. One says each of the 2. And the dispute will be who holds of the other one as well. Once we figure out who the Tana is, then the Gemara is going to try to figure out the sources for these halachos, and that'll bring us to a list of drashos and who does what with which pasuk and how we darshan it. So first of all, we begin a few lines in. The Gemara wants to know, why did we have to give a list of 7 things? We just give a general rule. Anything which is chametz mixed into a larger thing, it's tarovas chametz, is a lav. It's an isha deraisa without kares. Why don't we just say the rule? Why do you have to give the 7 examples? The Gemara says the reason you have to give the 7 examples is because we want people to know what is in the materials of these 7 examples, so that they know to be careful and be wary of it. They should be aware that there's a chametz in there, and some of them have other halachically significant materials in there. Like, for example, it was an incident that happened where somebody came from Marava to Bavel, from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, and he was traveling with meat, and he came and he went to a place and he ordered matkilta. He asked them to serve him matkilta. And when he heard them discussing that they're making his matkilta, they said that there was a kutach in it, and he remembered that kutach contains milk. So then he knew he can't have it with his meat, and he said, forget it, I don't want it. Well, that's why it's important to know what's in kutach. It's important to know where there's chametz inside of various different things, and that's why these things are listed in the Mishnah explicitly and specifically. Okay, now the Gemara wants to know who is the Tana that holds that chametz nuksha, again, that it's chametz which is not in its proper state, it's either not fully chametz or it's spoiled or hardened, chametz nuksha, and tarovis chametz, mixtures of chametz. It means chametz mixed into a much larger non-chametz. How do we know that these 2 things are only a lav? Who is the Tana? Who is the person? Who is the Manda Omar that holds that these things are a lav? So the Gemara brings 2 sources. There's a Machlokes Amoraim, which Tana it is. Rabbi Yehuda says it's Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Nachman said it's Rabbi Elazar. Now the Machlokes is that we're looking for the source for 2 things: tarovos chametz and chametz nuksha. Rabbi Yehuda quotes Rabbi Meir, who says it by chametz nuksha. Rabbi Nachman says it's Rabbi Elazar, who says it by taroves. The question is, which of the 2 would say it in the other one? And that's what their machlokes is about. According to Rabbi Yehuda, chametz nuksha is more lenient. And therefore, if Rabbi Meir says it in the case of chametz nuksha, he would certainly say that it's a lav in the case of taroves chametz. According to Rabbi Nachman, taroves chametz is more lenient, and therefore it must be Rabbi Elazar who says it in the case of tarovis chametz. He would also say that there's a lav on chametz nuksha, because that's stricter. So their argument is which is more lenient and which is stricter. We will assume that this Mishnah is the Manda Amar, who the specific case that he discusses is the more lenient one. Then we'll know if he says that that's a lav, then the stricter one is also a lav, and therefore he would be the author of our Mishnah who says that both are a lav. So first of all, before we get into that machlokes, let's find what their 2 sources are. Where do you see Rabbi Meir says that chametz nuksha is a lav that's not kares? So the Gemara discusses something called siur, not to be confused with seor. Siur is chametz which is not fully fermented, it's not fully become chametz, and therefore it's chametz nuksha. Is the machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, what level of the baking process, at what point does the dough become sior? According to Rabbi Meir, it's when it becomes a pale color, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's when it starts to develop the thinnest hairline cracks. That's a later stage. Now, when it becomes a pale color, therefore, according to Rabbi Meir, it's sior. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's nothing. It's fine. It's matzah still. When it develops hairline cracks, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's sior, and according to Rabbi Meir, it is complete chametz gamar. So now this Mishnah says that when you have sior, it has to be burned. Now that's sior, each one according to his understanding of what sior is. Rabbi Meir, when it's pale. Rabbi Yehuda, when it is, when it has hairline cracks. Now, then it said, now at that stage it's asur behana, that's for sure. Then this brisa continues and it says, but it's mutar b'hana, you're allowed to feed it to your dog. The Gemara says, well, how does that fit with the fact that you have to burn it? The Gemara says, no, we're referring to the lower level according to the one who holds of the higher level. That means when it's a pale color, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's not, you should not be eating it, but you can feed it to your dog. It's not asur b'hana. Now, then we say, and you get malchus for that. So the Gemara says, that's back to Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says, when it's a pale color, so that's siur, you get malchus for that. So therefore, you see that Rabbi Meir holds that siur is malchus, and therefore he holds chametz nuksha as malchus. It's a lav, no kares, and therefore he is the one who says it in our Mishnah. Says Rabbi Yehuda the Amora, if he says that chametz nuksha is malchus, he would certainly say that tarovas chametz is malchus because it is more chamer, it is stricter, it is more severe. Now, the other approach is Rabbi Nachman. He says that it's Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer has a machlokas with the chachamim. His machlokas is about tarovas chametz, and Rabbi Eliezer says tarovas chametz is a lav, and the chachamim say that it is nothing, it's mutter, it's no isser at all. So you see, Rabbi Eliezer says that tarovas chametz is a lav, and therefore says Rabbi Nachman, he would also say it by chametz nuksha, because I hold that that's more chamer. So now the Gemara says that I have a brisa which clearly supports the position of Rabbi Yehuda the Amar, who says that tarovas chametz is more chamer. Where do I see that? So the Gemara says as follows. We have a brisa, which is just like our brisa. Our Mishnah lists cases of things that are allowed, but not like our Mishnah. It only lists things that are tarovas chametz. It lists the 4 things in our Mishnah which are tarovas chametz. It leaves out the 3 things from our Mishnah that are chametz nuksha. Obviously, this brisa is then holding that only tarovas chametz is a lav, but chametz nuksha is not a lav. Now, who do we know who holds that tarovas chametz is a lav? That's Rabbi Eliezer. Obviously, tarovas chametz is more chamer, and Rabbi Eliezer cannot be the author of our Mishnah because you see that he holds only tarovas chametz is a lav, but chametz nuksha is not. Therefore, the author of our Mishnah must be Rabbi Meir, who holds that chametz nuksha is lav, and that's why he lists in our Mishnah both tarovas chametz and chametz nuksha, because tarovas chametz is stricter, and since he says it's halacha that chametz nuksha is a lav, he would certainly agree that tarovas chametz is also a lav. Now, this brisa that lists these things doesn't just list it; it also gives the sources for them. And the next lengthy discussion will be what the sources are for this halacha that tarovas chametz and chametz nuksha is a lav. Now, in order to be able to do this, we're going to have to analyze the psukim. There is a pasuk which describes the isser to eat chametz, that's the lav, and there's a different pasuk that says that you get kares for it. Now, the wording of the psukim are different, and therefore we have some extra words that can be used for drashas to include other things, various different extensions to each pasuk. What we're looking for is a drasha that's extra in the pasuk that discusses the lav. There's an extra drasha which can include tarovas chametz and chametz nuksha, and that drasha should not be available in the pasuk of kares, and therefore it won't be included in kares. It'll just be a lav. Now, what are the 2 psukim and what's available for drashas? So there's 3 primary availabilities here. The pasuk about the lav says, Kol machmetzes lo yisaychelu. it has the word kol is a drasha, and machmetzes, the fact that it says machmetzes and not chametz, is also available for a drasha. Now, the pasuk about kares says ki kol ocha chametz v'nichrasa. It doesn't say machmetzes. It does say kol, but there's another word that's available for a drasha, which is ki. So the Gemara, first of all, will try to use machmetzes. It says machmetzes about the lav. It doesn't say machmetzes about kares. Next, the Gemara will go to kol. That'll be rejected because it appears in both places. The Gemara will try to show that one is needed for something else and therefore not available in kares, but it is available in the lav. And then the Gemara will discuss ki. So, first we're in Rabbi Elazar. I'm going to try to figure out where he knows that tarovas chametz is a lav, and then the Gemara will go to the Chachamim, try to figure out how they learn that tarovas chametz is not a lav. So, first of all, as follows. The first approach is that it's from the word machmetzes. Machmetzes appears in the pasuk of the lav, not in the one of kari, so that's the source. Now the Gemara quickly rejects this. The Gemara says, but there's a different pasuk about kari that does have the word machmetzes. It says kol ocha. It says ki kol ocha machmetzes v'nichrasa. So you can't use machmetzes because there's another pasuk there's another pasuk describing the isakaris that has machmetzes. So machmetzes appears by both. So the Gemara says, no, that machmetzes is used for something else. That machmetzes by kares is to talk about where the chametz became chametz because yeast was added. There was a leavening agent added. It did not become chametz naturally. The Gemara says, well, if that's what machmetzes is used for in the pasuk of kares, then that could also be what machmetzes is used for in the pasuk of the lav. And you still don't have something extra in the pasuk of lav to include tarovas chametz. So Gemara says, you're right, we'll drop machmetzes. The drasha is from the word kol. Versus word kol. The word kol appears in both psukim. It appears both by lav and by kares. How could you say that's a source that there's an extra drasha to include a tarovas chametz and a lav? So Gemara says no, because the word kol by kares is needed for something else. It's to teach me that women are involved, that the iser kares applies to women as well. And therefore, that one is used up. The only one that's extra is the one of the lav. The Gemara says, no, that can't be. You don't need a pasuk to teach me that women are involved in the iser kares. Anything which is also for men is also for women. Rabbi Yehuda Amarav says that clearly. He quotes Tana Debei, Rabbi Yishmael. The pasuk says, "Isha kiyasem kochatas ha'adam." Hishva kazav isha leisha l'chol ancient shematera. Men and women are equal when it comes to all lo sases, all things which we should not be doing, and all punishments were the same. There is nothing which is kares for a man and not kares for a woman. Therefore, you don't need a pasuk for that. So Gemara says, you're right, that's generally true, but here I have a reason that I would think that there's a difference. What's the reason? The reason is that the Torah links eating matzah and not eating chametz. It says, Lo sachla of chametz shevas yam techal of matzahs. It says, don't eat chametz, eat matzah. So it links the two. And I would think, therefore, that only men who have a mitzvah daraisa of eating matzah should have a lav of eating chametz, and they should have a kares for eating chametz. I would think women are not involved. Therefore, I need an extra pasuk to teach me that it applies to women as well. So Gemara says, as a matter of fact, now that I have this limud, and I know that women do have an isser of eating chametz, I also extend it the other way, and I say that we could learn from the fact that women are involved in the isser of chametz, that they also now have a mitzvah the rest of eating matzah, even though generally they should not have a mitzvah of matzah because it should be considered a mitzvah sasesha as manigrama. It's a time and bound mitzvah. It's a mitzvah that it's a positive thing you're supposed to do. It can only be done during certain times, which is on Pesach night, the Seder night. But now I'm going to override that because it's linked to chametz, and I just showed you a source from the word kol that it is forbidden for women to eat chametz as well. So now the Gemara says that's all fine. I can accept it all, but you have two options as to what to do with the word kol by kares. You're telling me you want to use it to include women, but why should you use it to include women and not to include tarovas chametz? That would be a perfectly good thing to include. You could therefore have tarovas chametz being kares as well. How did you know that this word kol is to include women and not to include tarovas chametz? So the Gemara says it's simple, because the context here is talking about people who eat chametz. It's not talking about the type of chametz that's being eaten. It says kol oichel chametz v'nechrasa. It's telling me who's involved in the Isser. So if it says kol, it's including someone else who's also involved. So that's referring to women. It's not including a different type of chametz. We're not talking about the chametz, the various chametzes. We're talking about the various eaters. Someone says, hold on a second, but that's not a true rule. You don't say that you can only include the type of thing we're discussing. If we're discussing the eaters, we can only include other eaters. It's not true. I'll show you in the discussion about eating chaylev. We know that it's forbidden to eat certain fats of an animal. Somebody who eats chaylev, fats of an animal, gets kares. So the pasuk that says that phrases it about karbonis. It says, Ki kol ochel chaylev min ha-behema asher yakriv. So how do you know that animals that got a mum can't go on the mizbeach? How do you know that their chaylev is also aser? Because it says min ha-behema. The extra min is to include min ha-behema. Now how do you know that chulin, animals which have zero kedusha at all, how do you know that they're included? It says ki kol. It says an extra phrase there, kol, ki kol oichel chaylev. So that's talking about eaters. Ki kol oichel chaylev, everybody who eats should be including another eater, and you're now using it to include other types of chaylev. So you see, just because it's in context of other eaters doesn't mean that it can't be used to include other types of chaylev. So you should say the same thing here. The kol of kares for chametz is including other types of chametz, namely tarovas chametz. Doesn't have to be including other type of eaters such as women. Where it says, well, you're right, it's usable. You could use kol you could use an extra word to include something different than what you're discussing in context. You could be discussing eaters and have it include other types of chaylev, other types of food eaten, but that's because there's no better option there. But here we have two options. We could use it to include other types of eaters or other types of chametz. We'll obviously use we will obviously prefer to use the option which is what is being discussed in context, which is the types of eaters, and therefore we say that it's including women as a type of eater that is forbidden, and is not including a type of chametz which is forbidden, tarovas chametz. Okay, now the Gemara says, now we got it all down according to Rabbi Eliezer. What, however, do the Chachamim hold? How come the Chachamim say there is no lav? What do they do with the phrase kol, which we have over there in the pasuk? Says the Gemara, simple. What do we say the source was? We said the source was from the word kol. That kol in the pasuk of the lav is extra, and kol in the pasuk of kares is being used to include women. So guess what? These chachamim don't hold of a drasha of kol. They say kol is not extra. You can't include anything with it, and therefore it cannot be used to include anything into the lav, and therefore there is no lav on tarovas chametz. Gemara says, 1 second, if they don't actually kol, how are they going to know women are chayev? How do they know that they are included? We use kol for that. So Gemara says they have a different drasha. In the pasuk about kares, it says ki kol. They learn out of the word ki. And the ki only appears in the pasuk of kares, doesn't appear in lav, and therefore there is no drasha to include tarovas chametz. Gemara says, oh, hold on a second. Ki and kol are both available for drashas. If that's true, then Rabbi Elazar is back with a problem, because now he has two available words there. He has ki and kol. Kol, he said, is for women, and therefore he said there's nothing left to include tarovas chametz into the iser kares, but there's the word ki, so we can include iser tarovas chametz into kares by using the word ki kol ochel chametz v'nechrasa. So Gemara says, maybe you'll tell me that Rabbi Elazar doesn't hold of a drasha of ki. Gemara says it's not true, because we have in a different context where he does. The Brisa discussing using sa'ar on the mizbeach. It says you can't put sa'ar on the mizbeach, and how do you know you can't even put partial sa'ar on the mizbeach? From an extra word, ki, the pasuk says sa'ar ba'al taktiru, and the full phrase is ki kol sa'ar v'chol dvash lo taktiru. So he says ki, it's from the extra ki. You see, Rav Elazar does hold of ki. If he holds of ki, then he has an extra pasuk in kares, in the pasuk of the iser kares, that there is kares on chametz, that should be used to include tarovas chametz. Says the Gemara, kasha. That's a good question.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.